So I'd be very glad to answer questions if you have any.
How do titles work? I mean, do they work your way when you do these kind of things? You already knew I was going to do this book after book, and how do you tie it all together?
Brain Fever just land. Most titles just land for me. Due East was not my title, and I fought it bitterly, but I did not have a better one. So the publisher insisted on that title.
And then as they went on?
And as they went on, How I Got Him Back or Under the Whole Moon's Shine is both a play on seedy romance, and a line from Blake is the second half of that title. Who Do You Love is the Bo Diddley song. And, you know, everybody should use Bo Diddley once in a title. The Distance Between Us is a title I don't like anymore at all. As soon as my mother said, oh, that's a good title, I thought, oh, God. That's really a mistake. Brain Fever. I like The Powers, okay. The book I'm working on now, I have to say I'm really in love with the title. I don't know how the book is, but I love the title. The book is called The Last Days of Peace and Love, or Real Estate. It's a good title. Doesn't really fit well on a spine. Yes?
Yeah, Valerie, can you picture the whole novel when you start out?
No. No, what happens is I think this idea intrudes upon me. For example, this idea of a nervous breakdown and a sense of responsibility for the suffering of the entire world. And I think, well, that's a really bad idea for a novel. And my agent agrees, of course, that as she continually reminded me, a book about a middle-aged man having a crack up, that'll sell. So that really, it just pursues me. And that is how that happens. And then I just have to work it out. I do create very elaborate schema of all kind. I make drawings and have outlines, and they all fall to pieces immediately and instantly, and then have to be reconstructed. I like to believe I'm in charge at every moment, and I am not, or if I am, then I think it's a sign that the novel is going poorly, that it hasn't taken on a life of its own. Yes.
Sorry, I'm kind of back here.
Fine.
Can you hear me?
Yes, just fine.
So I noticed like a distinct change in kind of voice and maybe maturity from your first reading to the second reading. And I was wondering if you could take us through your own process of just writing the same characters, but with a different style, narrative style between the two books.
Yeah, thank you. What a wonderful question. And I'm really struck, especially reading that first book, Due East. There's something very naive in the writing that I always feel my own students are so far beyond. There's just such a different level of facility with language. With the students I work with now in MFA programs, I do in some part account for that by this strange moment in literary history, this moment of minimalism that sort of polluted the literary atmosphere. I was a Faulkner person all through my own college days, and really trying to rid myself of all of that, and very determined to write this very clean, simple narrative. I was a great admirer of Muriel Spark, and still am. In some ways, she's just absolutely one of my favorite novelists. And this is certainly not Muriel Spark. I can hear that clearly enough. But I think with each novel, the sense of what I wanted to do veered much more sharply from very simple ideas like, oh, I must get away from Faulkner and move toward Muriel Spark, as I was thinking with the writing of the first one, and more to, oh God, what's going on? Let's just keep going. By the time I got to Brain Fever, a sense that a certain abandon was needed for novel writing that has instructed me for better, for worse, as I go on. Each one tries something a little different, not wildly different. I think it's pretty easy to see that it's me throughout all 6 of the novels that have been published to date. And I have novels stockpiled, by the way. Failures of novels, semi-finished novels, an early novel that never saw the light of day. Thank God. So I should think that the worst thing would be to feel with every novel that you did know what you were doing with that one. Yes?
When you're writing, when you start writing, whether it's a story or a novel, how do you know what it's going to end up as? Do you get to a point where you can just say, okay, I'm done, this is just a short story, or is there a sense when you're writing that, oh, I'm not done, I have to keep this going to the novel?
Yeah, for many years, I was just absolutely terrified of short stories. I wrote a collection of short stories for my MFA thesis, and even I knew they weren't any good. And I have tried to smuggle those stories out of the library at Columbia University. I just knew that I had, as I thought of it then, no gift for the short story. So I really embarked on a lifetime of writing novels with that idea. And I always knew I was in for the long haul. There was this strange moment when, and it was about midway through my time here at Notre Dame, when I thought, I'm teaching people to write short stories every day, I should really make myself write some short stories. And I actually began to write along with the assignments I gave my students, which I thought was only fair, It is, for all kinds of practical reasons, much easier to tackle the short story in the space of a semester. It's kind of nuts, though. I mean, I continue to think that the short story is the highest literary form. There's something quite magical about a short story that approaches the poem in terms of its compression and complexity. So I began to do that, and I sort of got into it, and started thinking, well, maybe I could write a short story after all, and I hope I got better at it, but I've enjoyed that very much. The form, I think, suggests itself almost instantly in terms of questions like length and how far it's going to go. But of course, it's always open to enormous changes at the last minute. Thanks, Jack. And you had a question.
How do you persevere to the end of a novel?
Caffeine. Mostly caffeine, I would say.
Do you ever have a point where you're like, I started with this great idea, I was so passionate about it, and now I don't know.
Yeah, and I think I feel much more able to put something aside, or it's very hard for me to throw anything away. So I wasn't kidding about these half-finished novels and false starts and things I may come back to. But I do feel a lot more permission. In the beginning, the point was just to finish, just really to finish. So I guess I finished my first novel. I wrote stories through grad school, realized how bad I was at it, and wrote a novel immediately thereafter. And it was pretty bad, I guess. It certainly embarrassed me later to read it, but it got me an agent, so maybe it wasn't such a bad thing to finish, I thought. And it was just on to the next. And it's just felt like that. There is something very, very compulsive. I don't want to claim any particular hold on neuroses, or psychoses, but I think writers tend to be of the obsessive type. Yes.
Being in Brooklyn and writing about South Carolina, can you comment, just how did the process go, and also how much did you make up or construct from memory as a displaced Southerner, or your level of displacement that you contribute today?
That's a wonderful question. I have so much ambivalence about South Carolina. I don't know if you could hear it in the fiction. But, I just love the geography where I grew up, and I long for it in a physical way. There's just no other way to describe it. I could feel myself stretching across the East Coast to get down there. Just beautiful, beautiful country, and filled with such rich memories of struggle. I grew up during the Jim Crow days. I went to segregated schools until I was in 9th grade, and I just had the great privilege of living through integration in South Carolina. There was no more positive moment that anybody could have in a lifetime than that. It was really so amazing to see people change utterly in the space of a few months, a year. People's heads were turned around and they were forced to become decent. And so, that's also a very painful memory of that time and that struggle. I'm just filled with ambivalence. So on the one hand, it was really safe to write about South Carolina from Brooklyn. I went down a lot, and many trips were taken with the excuse of just getting the details right, or soaking in, the geography, the weather, which we could all think about at this moment. I used to say that I knew I was going to leave a place when I started to write about it, and indeed, when I started to write about Brooklyn, I came to South Bend. I have started to write about the Midwest, but I'm still here for now. Jane.
Mine's related. How much of your own autobiography goes into the
Nothing. Nothing. Nothing there. I deny everything. And I feel I have to stand by that. It's just all made up. Nothing to do with me. Yes.
Valerie, would you speak a little bit about your writing life, especially as a professor here at Notre Dame? How have you found the balance there? Do you find really structured times for writing, or do you write as the inspiration comes? How does that work for you, the duration of your career?
It's really hard. This audience is filled with MFA students, and boy, do they know how really hard it is. We load them down with all these other things to do. The way I have to do it is first. So, I just have a routine of getting up and moving in one way or another. Usually that's a long walk with the dog, not recently, but I'm struggling through Nordic track at the moment. But, and then I really just try to claim some moment of time. And as chair of the English department, it's really been more like a moment very often. But it is a way of reminding myself who I am and what the work is and why we are all here, which otherwise seems to slip away so easily in a morass of reports. Yes?
Professor Simmons, could you tell us about one of your stories that never saw the light of day that is especially interesting to you?
Oh, I have a story. I do have one story right now that remains unpublished, and I've stopped sending it around. You can only take so much rejection. But it's called Watching White Folks Dance, and it is actually based on a true story in South Bend, although it does not progress as the real incident progressed. some people in the audience will know about this true event that happened in South Bend, Indiana. This is at a time when my husband and I had very recently experienced two undergrads ringing our doorbell on a football weekend. Must have been about 3 o'clock in the morning, and so they rang the doorbell, and my husband goes downstairs to see if somebody needs help, and opens the door. Tell me if I'm getting this wrong, Chris, or lying, but they said, "Do you have any beer?" And we were mad. Let me just say, we were a little mad. We were a little irritated. So just a couple of weeks later, a couple of football weekends later, this kid goes up to a house in South Bend, and the kid is white, and the guy who owns the house is black, and the kid peed on the guy's front porch. And the guy went and got a shotgun. And he told the kid to get off the porch. And the kid did not get off the porch. So he fired the shotgun. And I don't think it even grazed the guy. But there was a big to-do, as you can imagine. But it just really struck me, the notion of privilege that so many people have. Have you got any beer? I think I'll just pee on your porch. And even though, let me just make it clear that I am utterly opposed to taking out a shotgun and shooting someone, especially these days. But then, it didn't seem so bad. No, it did seem bad. I'm exaggerating. I'm just saying it had a kind of symbolic value that I embraced. And, so the story I wrote begins actually being downtown at one of these events on the island. They have these meet me on the island events for public radio subscribers. And I was watching all these white people dance. And they were just such bad dancers that it just sort of fell into place, I thought, but no one else has thought so. I find my sense of humor is often not shared. So that is one story I've written that no one else has appreciated. Well, thank you all so much.